Whether you're a foodie or history buff, prefer hiking or relaxing on the beach, these East Coast road trips will truly deliver. Unlike the West Coast, where only 3 states border the Pacific, a total of 14 states lie along the Atlantic shores. Road trips on the East Coast offer plenty of variety, taking in mountains, beaches, rugged seashores, large cities, small towns, and intracoastal waterways. To top it off, seafood from Maine's lobsters and Maryland's oysters to Florida's stone crabs is abundant. Nearly every East Coast state has a culinary specialty as well, making food a memorable part of any East Coast road trip. But before we get started, subscribe to our channel, give us a like and post the video on social media. Next, we'll tell you how to do 9 of the best East Coast trips for history, beaches, and seafood. Boston, Massachusetts to Burlington, Vermont. If you're on the East Coast when the trees begin to change color, a road trip through Vermont and New Hampshire will deliver some of the greatest autumn backdrops you could imagine. Starting in Boston, head north to Lake Winnipesaukee, where you'll find one of the country's best lake towns. Dubbed America's oldest summer resort town, Wolfeboro is a place worth spending a night to soak up the Americana aesthetic in this town that many have called Rockwell-esque. From the lake, drive an hour north on New Hampshire 16 to get to North Conway, where you can get on the Kankamagus Highway, a top-tier national scenic byway for fall foliage lovers that offers scenic stopping points like waterfalls and gorges. The highway travels for 34.5 miles through the White Mountain National Forest. Once you've come out the other side in Lincoln, New Hampshire, you can continue on your way west and cross over into Vermont. Set your sights next on Stowe, Vermont's most picturesque ski resort town, and the location of the Trapp Family Lodge, the historic home of the real Von Trapp family that inspired Rodgers and Hammerstein to write The Sound of Music. If there's no snow on the ground, the area offers plenty of trails for biking and hiking, or you can enjoy a scenic gondola ride and the charming downtown area. You'll finish the trip when you arrive in the state capital of Burlington, a small city with a youthful personality as the home of the University of Vermont. You can stock up on farm-fresh groceries at the celebrated Saturday Farmers Market and go bar hopping among the city's many craft breweries. Boston, Massachusetts to Acadia National Park, Maine. There's no shortage of ways to explore Boston's self-guided walking tours, museum visits, and strolls through Little Italy, in the North End, and historic spots like Faneuil Hall and Boston Common are all great options for soaking in the city. Visitors can also take a harbor cruise or ride a seasonal swan boat in the Public Garden Lagoon. Don't leave town without sampling the city's famous clam chowder and Boston cream pie. The fastest route on this 285-mile trip takes nearly 5 hours and passes through Salem, Massachusetts, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Portland, Maine, and Augusta, Maine's capital, before reaching Bar Harbor. You'll experience New England's scenery and history if you take U.S. Route 1 with a few detours along the way. Traveling north on U.S. Route 1 from Boston, you'll pass over the Mystic River. If time allows, watch for the Yankee Division Highway heading east toward Gloucester, a worthwhile detour if you're interested in seeing lighthouses, fishermen's memorial statues, and historic buildings. Back on the highway, you'll drive north, just a mile or so from the sea most of the time, briefly passing through New Hampshire until you reach Portsmouth and enter Maine. Continue through beach towns and the Rachel Carson National Wildlife Refuge and take State Route 9 for a detour to Kennebunkport. Spend the night, dine on Maine lobster, and check out the stunning mansions in this nearly 400-year-old town. Take Route 9 around the shore, then head back to U.S. Route 1 on Route 208. Continue on U.S. Route 1 to Portland, another great option for an overnight stay. From Portland, 3 hours on the shore hugging scenic route will get you to Bar Harbor and Acadia National Park. New York to Newport, Rhode Island. Spending a few days in Manhattan is the ideal lead-in to a relaxing road trip to a quieter town like Newport. After noshing on bagels or pizza, shopping, visiting museums, and strolling through Central Park, it could be time for a change. Don't leave without walking across the Brooklyn Bridge, meandering along the High Line, and experiencing the National September 11th Memorial Museum. When it's time to leave, head north on Franklin D. Roosevelt East River Drive, FDR Drive, along the East River to the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge, which spans the Harlem River. Interstate 278 then takes you through the Bronx and onto Interstate 95 through Westchester County. The highway runs northeast, close to the shore of the Long Island Sound into Connecticut. You'll pass through New Haven, home of Yale University, and have an opportunity to explore the campus. Shortly after the town of Guilford, exit onto State Route 1, which will take you closer to the sea and add about 30 minutes to the 4-hour, 185-mile trip, but it's well worth it for the views and beach access. You'll join Interstate 95 again to get back on your way to Newport, eventually exiting onto State Route 102 and then Route 138. In Newport, park your vehicle and spend a few car-free days along the shore, strolling the 3.5-mile cliff walk, exploring vintage mansions, and enjoying fresh seafood. Take a bike ride along one of many trails or relax on a sunset cruise. New York to Washington, D.C. This 226-mile trip takes approximately 4 hours, depending on traffic and road conditions. From Lower Manhattan, take the Holland Tunnel that passes under the Hudson River to New Jersey. You'll be on Interstate 78 in Jersey City, with views of Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty. The Interstate Highway crosses Newark Bay on the Vincent R. Costiano Memorial Bridge, then meets Interstate 95 heading south. Driving south on Interstate 95, New Jersey Turnpike, Staten Island, one of New York City's boroughs, will be on your left across a narrow body of water called Arthur Kill. The word kill is derived from the Dutch, influential in settling this part of the Northeast. Continue south on Interstate 95 through New Jersey, maybe taking a detour to the beaches of the Jersey Shore until you cross the Delaware River into the state of Delaware. You'll soon enter Maryland, where Interstate 95 is named John F. Kennedy Memorial Highway, cross the Susquehanna River, and go on to Baltimore. Continue south on the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, 295, into Washington, D.C., where there's plenty to see and do, from museums, memorials, and monuments to outdoor activities on the waterfront. The Smithsonian museums alone could fill several days, plus there's hiking, biking, and boating for those who want to spend some time outdoors. Baltimore, Maryland to Virginia Beach, Virginia. Starting in Baltimore, this East Coast road trip will take you on a long detour from I-95 that passes through a rare coastal landscape populated by wild horses. From Baltimore, it's a 118-mile drive across the Chesapeake Bay to Delaware's Bethany Beach, a lovely first beach to set the tone for this coastal adventure. From here, travel south along the water until you reach Ocean City, Maryland, a classic American beach town to base your adventures in Assateague State Park. Open to beach campers, this 48,000-acre stretch of grass and sand is considered one of the country's most scenic camping destinations. You'll find wild horses roaming the landscape on Assateague and further south on Virginia's Chincoteague Island, which is your next stop. There's no main road connecting the two islands, although there are many backcountry campsites, so you will have to briefly go back inland to get to Chincoteague, where you'll find even more beautiful scenery, horses, and the famous pony swim, which takes place every summer. During the event, spectators can watch as the horses are herded across the bay by the saltwater cowboys in an impressive display of the animals' swimming chops. From Chincoteague Island, it's a beautiful 105-mile drive with the Atlantic on one side and the Chesapeake Bay on the other. Make sure to stop for lunch in one of the small towns along the way for fresh seafood. When you reach the end of the island, you'll travel across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel and arrive at your final destination in Virginia Beach, another classic American beach town, where you'll have your pick of chic hotels and a large boardwalk with plenty of restaurants and attractions for all ages. Washington, D.C. to Nags Head, North Carolina. After taking in the sights, restaurants, and history of our nation's capital, you may be ready to head to the beach. This trip takes you about 280 miles south to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. As with most of these road trips, there's the faster way and the more scenic route. In this case, the scenic drive adds nearly an hour to the approximately 5.5-hour trip, but if you're on vacation, it's worth the additional time. Head south out of Washington, D.C. on Interstate 395, which turns to Interstate 95. You'll pass the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, then cross the Potomac River into Virginia. Continue south until you reach State Route 3 around Fredericksburg. Head east on Route 3, then south on Route 17. Called Tidewater Trail, Route 17 meanders along next to the Rappahannock River, a spot known for outdoor fun and delicious oysters. You'll cross the York River and the James River, which empty into the Chesapeake Bay. In the city of Newport News, take Interstate 64 southeast, and in Chesapeake, take Route 168 into North Carolina. The highway meets up with Route 158, takes you along a narrow peninsula to the Wright Memorial Bridge, and south to the Outer Banks town of Nags Head. Relax on the beach, Climb to the top of the still-active Bodie Island Lighthouse, or watch the hang gliders at Jockey's Ridge State Park among massive sand dunes. Charlotte, North Carolina to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. For this scenic East Coast road trip, you'll travel to the heart of Appalachia, starting in Charlotte, North Carolina, where you can pay a visit to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. From here, you'll head west to Asheville, another city with a lot of character and a unique history. Consider this your gateway to the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. While in town, you should stop by the Biltmore Estate, the impressive mansion of the famously rich Vanderbilt family, and plan to spend sunset at the Omni Grove Park Inn, a historic hotel that once hosted American authors like F. Scott Fitzgerald and also has the best sunset views in town. From Asheville, get yourself to the Blue Ridge Parkway, a road that provides 469 miles to explore the poetic Appalachian mountain landscape from the comfort of your car, with plenty of stopping points to enjoy a cozy cabin lodge or gentle hike. The road goes northwest through Virginia, but we recommend traveling southwest to finish in the Smoky Mountains and then crossing the national park until you reach Gatlinburg. For a trip this grand, why not plan a big finale and book a night in one of the region's luxury treehouses? The Sanctuary Treehouse Resort in nearby Pigeon Forge is home to beautiful feats of architecture with real treehouses boasting trip-making amenities like outdoor hot tubs and swinging daybeds. Wilmington, North Carolina to Savannah, Georgia. Start or end this road trip by spending a few days in the riverfront city of Wilmington, strolling Cape Fear's 1.75-mile riverwalk, browsing the shops, or dining at one of the waterfront cafes or restaurants. Tour the Battleship North Carolina, just across the river from downtown, to catch a glimpse of its role in World War II's Pacific Theater. Spend a day at the beach or ride in a horse-drawn carriage among Wilmington's historic mansions. When it's time to begin your drive south to Savannah, you have a few options. The fastest route is inland on Interstate 95, a little less than 5 hours for 300 miles. But take your time and drive near the coast on US Route 17. While this will add around an hour, you'll pass through small towns and be able to stop for lunch on a nearby beach. If time allows, you could happily take 3 days or more to enjoy this scenic and historic section of the coast. Head west across the Cape Fear River, then US Route 17 takes you inland for a few miles south before you get close to the Atlantic shore for most of the drive. You'll pass Shallot, its river of the same name, and the Brunswick Islands, 5 barrier islands with beaches, seafood, and a historic atmosphere. North Carolina's Outer Banks region, which comprises 100 miles of shoreline, is a popular summer destination, and you might decide to spend some time, or even a night, in one of the beachside towns. Myrtle Beach in South Carolina might be your next stop, or you can continue your scenic drive along the shore and spend the night in Charleston. Continue on US Route 17, driving near the Sea Islands, hundreds of barrier islands along the shores of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida for about 2 hours, before arriving in Savannah. Savannah, Georgia to Orlando, Florida. It may not be easy to leave Savannah's squares, parks, riverfront, and restaurants, but if you're planning a visit to Orlando's theme parks and many attractions, it's time to get on the road. Most of the 300-mile trip will be on Interstate 95, which runs fairly close to the coast, but there's a short detour that takes you to Sea Island, Little Street Simon's Island, and Jekyll Island that's well worth an extra hour or more. Take Interstate 16 west out of Savannah to meet up with Interstate 95 south. You'll drive mostly inland but pass over creeks and streams along the way. Shortly after the Altamaha River, watch for a turnoff onto State Route 99, then take Route 17 south. Take a road to whichever island you want to visit. Then, continue on Route 17, which meets up with Interstate 95 again. Continue south, passing Amelia Island, and on toward Jacksonville, where you'll cross the St. Johns River. You'll drive near the coast as you pass St. Augustine, the nation's oldest city, and a variety of beach towns. At Daytona Beach, home of the Daytona International Speedway, head southwest on Interstate 4, passing Lake Monroe and on to Orlando, where hotels, Disney World, Epcot, Universal Studios, and entertainment of all kinds await. Explore the natural surroundings at Shingle Creek Regional Park, where you can paddle a canoe or kayak, or enjoy a quiet picnic. Guys, if you liked our video, but you haven't subscribed to us yet, subscribe right now and post the video on social networks. There will be a lot of interesting things in the next episodes. See you soon. Bye.